Is white monopoly capital the biggest problem in South Africa, or is it a diversion tactic to withdraw our attention from the real problems in South Africa? With us in studio today is Mr. Mzwanele Manyi, the president of the Progressive Professionals Forum and also the founder of the Decolonization Foundation. I don't want to talk too much about the Guptas and state capture and all of that, but maybe just as a brief intro, what is your view on that? Are you concerned about state capture and the fact that the Guptas have taken over South Africa?
No, look, I think, first, thank you very much for the opportunity. Just as an icebreaker, how come there's not even one black person in this room? I'm the only black person in this room. You see what you're talking about? It's exactly this.
We can talk about that.
Yeah, not one black person in this room, except the ones at the gates that allowed me in and so on. So that is the issue as a starting point. But I think what South Africa needs to understand is that there has never been a time when the state has not been captured. The state has always been captured from day one. I can give you examples. You see, the reason you have these cost plus models at Eskom, that is state capture. Private sector is ripping off the state through those cost plus models at Eskom. You've got big companies there, your BHP, Billetins, your Anglos of this world, and so on. Your Exaro, by the way, has got only a small BE component of 30%. It's otherwise a white company. So we've got all these white companies that are benefiting from Eskom on cost plus model, which means that for all the development costs, for all the costs, state still pays, and they still charge for the product. And yet Eskom has been paying for all this development. And interestingly, the Guptas that you're concerned about, who only have a small percentage of Eskom arrangement, only about 5% and so on. And in that 5%, they don't even do a cost plus model. In fact, I would argue that the profitability of Eskom is attributable to the kind of contract that Tegeta has with Eskom, which is not punitive to Eskom as it were. But the rest of the economy is actually captured by a white monopoly, as it were. I mean, if you look, even in terms of our laws are also captured. You've got a triple PFA, the Preferential Procurement Policy Framework Act. That act favors white monopoly capital. This is an act that says that if you want to procure as government, you must do it in a manner that says price takes priority. 90% of the points are on the lowest price. Now, how on earth can you have a situation where black people who are just starting in business are put on par with big conglomerates, white conglomerates that have been in this business for a long time? How can you even compete? I mean, the discussion does not even start. And then you are told that you must compete on an equal footing with somebody that has got economies of scale, somebody that has got lower costs of funding, and all that. So you can't compete with a situation like this, but it's a law that you must compete. So our laws are even captured. You've got CIDB in the construction sector, which is pretty much the same thing, you know. So I can quote a few of these other laws as well, just to show the extent of capture that this government is finding its way through. Yes. What the Guptas have done, they have disrupted the white monopoly plunder, as it were. That's what they've done. They have disrupted this. They are giving white monopoly capital a run for their money. They've disrupted them in the coal business. They've disrupted them in the media space. I mean, last time I heard there was some discussion about trying to close ANN7. This is how much competition white monopoly capital does not want to have. So that's how I see them. So for me, I'm saying all those that if Guptas have done anything illegal, they must be arrested. No problem with that. If they've done anything wrong, the issue I have is that we have a situation where the Guptas, there's no court of law, not only in South Africa, in the world, that has found them guilty on anything. This is just fact of life. Okay? White monopoly capital has been found guilty every day by the Competitions Commission You've got the construction sector that stole 50 billion on its own, and they are still roaming around the streets. SARS has reported that in the year 2015-2016, 60 billion rand of illicit outflows have happened. This is white monopoly capital stealing this. We have white monopoly capital rigging the banks, rigging currency, and all this causing havoc in the country because they want their own way. So this is a situation that we've got. This is how much strong white monopoly capital is in South Africa, and this is this dominance that must be tempered with if we are to all enjoy the economy.
So there's a report that came out, this Pottinger report, that said that in order to divert the attention from state capture, people need to put white monopoly capital to the white monopoly capital on the agenda as a way of diverting the attention. And if I recall, your name was mentioned in that report. Is that report accurate? Is it a true report? What's your relationship with Pottinger? Is it an exaggeration? Is it a conspiracy theory? What's your view on that?
What are the facts? The facts are the issue of white monopoly capital is not a brand new lexicon in South Africa, not even in the ANC. Trevor Manuel lied. He lied when he said the white monopoly capital is not in the lexicon of the ANC. That is a pure lie from Trevor Manuel. You can look at in fact, you must check on my Twitter timeline. I've posted there what Oliver Tambo said about the white monopoly domination, both on a political level and at economic level. You can look at what President Mandela said about the white monopoly domination when he was released from prison. So this issue of white monopoly capital is not a brand new subject. Even the South African Communist Party, Dr. Blade Nzimande, must check his utterances in 2007, is also on my Twitter timeline. So this notion that Pottinger has introduced a subject is a lot of lies, no such a thing. I mean, if you look at, even Malema has been crying white monopoly capital. Even Ivan Jim at NUMSA has been crying. Even Zwelithini Mavavi. Are you saying all these people are Pottinger's people? It just shows that that articulation is itself a fake articulation. It's an articulation that articulation in itself is the one that seeks to distract us from the real thing, and the real thing is white monopoly capital. And I think if people don't understand this, it's a very simple thing. Banking, who owns banking in this country? 90% of more of banking is owned by white monopoly capital. Construction sector, who owns more than 90% is white monopoly capital. Cell phone industry, who owns these companies? White monopoly capital. The list goes on. Fuels industry, not only white monopoly capital, Sasol owns about 95% of the fuels. Wood and paper, who owns this? It's white monopoly capital. Two companies, Sapi and Mondi, own about 90% of wood and paper. Auditing, 90% of auditing is owned by just the big four companies. If you look at insurance industry, 99% of insurance industry is owned by white monopoly capital. So what is the story about this is fake? This is real. Anybody that says white monopoly capital does not exist is a liar. Whoever says that is lying. White monopoly capital is real, it exists, and it continues to benefit, it continues to manifest itself, it continues to terrorize. I mean, right now, white monopoly capital is taking Minister Msebenzi, Minister Mzwanele to court simply because they're arrogant. They don't want to respect the charter, which is supposed to regulate what empowerment initiatives need to unfold in the mining industry. So because they are so arrogant, they want their way. They don't understand that you must be consulted, but the decision still remains the minister's decision. They confuse to be consulted with being taken in decisions in consultation with, which is not the case. They must be consulted. They have been consulted. The fact that they're unhappy with the consultation, too bad. We have to move on. It's impossible to make everybody happy.
Okay, so you said, I think you mentioned Sapi and Mondi, and you spoke about I think medical insurance, I'm assuming you're talking about Discovery Health and MediHealth.
Insurance industry, the whole insurance industry.
The whole, so when you say they are white monopoly capital, what does that mean? What are the criteria for a company to be white monopoly capital? Do the employees need to be white? Is it about top management?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I'm glad to ask that question because you see, we must not confuse issues here. White monopoly capital does not mean general white people. No. It does not mean a coffee shop of a white person. No. It does not mean a small factory of a white person. No. You know, the general average white people are not white monopoly capital. In fact, those white people must assist us to deal with white monopoly capital. These are the few oligopolies that we have that control serious market share in the country. The issue is market share, not more the color of your skin. But so happens that this market share is controlled by white people, as it were. But the key issue here, the key determining factor, is the amount of market share that we have. You have these oligopolies that because they are oligopolies, they can control the rules of engagement, they can increase barriers of entry into those sectors, they can determine the rules that suit them and make sure that everybody else does not qualify. And therefore they have a license, an unfettered license to exploit both resources and people. So that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about your average white person. In fact, I'm calling upon white people in this country to help us fight white monopoly capital because it actually increases the cost of living for everybody. It reduces competition for everybody, including for white people. So this is not a racist call. It's a call to ensure that the economy of South Africa is equitably shared amongst all the people of South Africa, not just a few a clique of elite. Yeah.
But it sounds almost as if you were talking about the private sector. Is the private sector the problem or part of the problem? And what's the relationship between white monopoly capital and the private sector? Is it the same thing?
Yeah. I'm glad to ask this question because you see, those that say drop the white and just say monopoly capital, I think they're missing the point. You miss the point because there are certain monopolies that are desirable. So if you just say monopoly capital, you're going to target the wrong monopolies. What are the right monopolies? The right monopolies are the state-owned monopolies. I do want Eskom to continue to be a monopoly because it will be controlled by a caring government that will ensure that there's cross-subsidization for the poor. So I do want Rand Water to continue to be a monopoly because I don't want a situation where the poor people have to battle to get water. And so on and so on. So all and the monopolies
as well.
The SABC is not a government entity. Is a public. It's a public. It's a public broadcaster, not a government broadcaster. Yeah. It's a public broadcaster. So it must ensure that what it does is in the public interest. And by the way, it's a different discussion. But I think once we at it quickly, SABC must understand that to broadcast government work is actually in the public interest. So they mustn't be shy to deal and broadcast government work. That is in the public interest. We pay to ensure that government exists as taxpayers, and therefore it is in our interest to know what are the government programs and all that. So SABC must be sensitive to that, and it cannot take a pure commercial line when it comes to government. It must understand that to broadcast government work is actually their duty and obligation because it is in the public interest.
Okay, so I don't want to derail the discussion, but on the SABC, when you say government work, the criticism that the SABC is getting from government is that it is unpatriotic, that it is too negative or critical, or not only SABC, media in general, towards government. What's that balance? Do you think the SABC should be critical towards government?
I think the SABC should report government work, however, whatever that means. There will be certain things that government is doing that is good. There will be certain things that government is doing that is maybe not so good. It must report balanced. This is the issue. It must report truthfully and balanced and in an objective manner. Let us, the public, decide what to make of it. And that is the problem with not only SABC, but with generally journalism in general, where people take their own opinions and their own views and they make it fact. This is a problem. I think everyone is entitled to their own opinions, and I have no problem for you to put your name and say this is what I think and so on, but don't report it as a fact. It's okay to report your opinion, but label it as such. It's your opinion, it's not a fact, and so on. And then facts must be facts, opinions must be opinions. What we're asking SABC to do is to report fairly in a balanced manner and without hiding anything that it should not hide and all that. So just transparency and all. And indeed, there are a lot of things that government does that are very good, but the general editorial position is to report the deviations, and even in the deviations, the reported deviations are the negative deviations. So if you report deviations, report both negative and positive. If government exceeded targets, report that. Don't say they get paid to do it. And then when they have not done it, then you say they have not done it, they have not done it. I think the problem is when you focus on all the things that have not been done to the total exclusion of the things that have been done. For instance, with the poverty that we have in the country, you need to be able to say, with the poverty that we have in South Africa, this government has ensured that at least the poor, 18 million of them, get social grants, because business is on an investment strike. Business is not investing in the economy. They are sitting with billions of reserves in their balance sheets, and the economy is not growing because they are busy using their economic muscle to drive a particular political agenda. This is the problem. So you have a situation where government is sitting with that kind of a challenge. Now, SABC must report that despite this challenge, there is still water, 85% or whatever of the people in South Africa are getting clean water. Report progress on the flushing toilets, how many people are now getting flushing toilets. And these are all the things that to the elite is a lot of nonsense to the elite, because they've got 10 taps in their own houses. They don't understand. You have to be telling me about water. They've got, I don't know how many toilets. How many toilets do you have in your house? I
have 2.
We have 2.
3.
You have 3 toilets.
Yeah.
You see, you've got 3 toilets in your house. There are people that have 1 out there, outside. All 3 ours are in the house. There's in the black communities, other people have got 1 toilet outside the house and all that. So we've got those kinds of challenges that government is dealing with. So when government is making progress on those must be reported. Don't wait until somebody has stolen money and report that. Yes, report that, but also report the good as well.
Okay, so there's a lot there that we can discuss.
Yeah.
But on the issue of monopoly, just to go back to that. So are you saying that monopoly is a problem if it's in the private sphere, but monopoly is not a problem if it's in the public sphere, or if it's a government-owned monopoly?
Oh, sorry, I got distracted there with the SABC. Yes, I'm saying the discussion on monopoly capital, should not leave out the white, because if you do, you're going to create this confusion where you're going to create this confusion where you target everything. And what that is going to do is going to target companies. There's going to be a low-hanging fruit, and the low-hanging fruit is going to be the state-owned enterprises, because you can easily sabotage them. You're going to end up with a situation where we now hear that Eskom must be privatized, SAA must be privatized, Randwater must be privatized, all these...
Where?
You know? So we do not want the privatization of our state-owned monopolies. This is the thing. Now, when you say monopoly capital, I mean, I hear comrades saying, we don't care what color monopoly, they get into all this hype. Hey, we don't care what color monopoly, as long as it's monopoly. And then they start to import Marxism, and they put Leninism, all of these things, put all of there, and they start to big language, bourgeoisie, petty bourgeoisie, comparado bourgeoisie, all of these Marx things. They just bring them here, and they say, if it's monopoly, you must... No. There are certain monopolies that we want. State-owned monopolies must stay, because those are the monopolies that are going to look after the poor. We must not be confused by this big language of the South African Communist Party and trying to destroy everything that is a monopoly. No, 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 no. We want state-owned monopolies purely for the protection of the poor, because once you dismantle them, it's a problem. The focus should be, by the way, government controls only 25% of the GDP. 75% is controlled by the private sector. So indeed, if we want a quick return, if we want to ensure that a lot more people benefit on the economy, we must deconcentrate the 75% that is white-owned. This is the issue. The ANC, when it talks about deracializing the economy, what are they talking about? The ANC presidents, President Oliver Tambo, President Mandela, when they were talking about the domination of the economic situation, political situation, what were they talking about? Now, why is it that we have people today that are trying to deny this, that the economy is white-dominated, and so on? And I've explained this before, that what are the criteria that we're looking at. But bottom line is that it is a fact of life in South Africa that the economy is dominated by white people, and we're trying to deracialize that. This is why even you have targets even on employment equity. They dominate everything. Even if we look at employment equity at the top, despite the fact that white people constitute something like only 10% of the economic active population, but at the top they're like 70%. Can you believe this? Can you believe, top management. Can you believe that in South Africa, with 80% black people, but at the top they are only a measly 13 or so odd percent? I mean, what nonsense is this? This is a problem that we're dealing with.
I wanna talk about the monopolies as well, but
yeah.
I don't wanna go away from that. But on this issue, this is always the focus. I mean, you were the chairperson of the Employment Equity Commission, is that correct? So, so this is always the focus of the Commission's report, is top management.
Yes.
But how many people are in top management in South Africa? It's around, I think, 60,000 or something. It's around there.
What's your point?
The point is that, the point that I'm trying to get to is that it's about 1% of the economically active population are in top management. So why is the focus so much on top management? Because even if top management were 100% black, that would still be 100% of 1% that is black. So I think the bigger question is middle class or middle management and the rest of the picture. But the focus is always on top management.
So you're saying let's just leave it like that and just leave the white people at the top?
No, I'm not. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the focus on top management creates an impression that of what the situation in the labor market is in South Africa. Well, top management, what's happening in top management is not an indication of what's happening in the labor market.
Let me assist you to understand why it's important to transform the top management. And I use this word transform very deliberately, because sometimes people create a confusion. They think that black people by themselves, when you have a black face, is necessary transformation on its own. No, it's not. But it's a building block. But it also depends on these black people if they understand their role and responsibility once they get there. The point is about ensuring that the policies of this country, the policies of companies, the policies of government reflect the heterogeneous base of the market that they're trying to serve. You can't have a situation where a monolithic group sits at the top and determine policy. This is the issue. You want to ensure that the policy makers who generally sit at the top must reflect the population that they're serving. This will ensure that the policies resonate with the masses. Kind of a situation where all the policies are Eurocentric because it's only Europeans at the top. The policies must reflect everyone so that everyone must feel at home.
When you say Eurocentric, what do you mean? You mean favoring white people?
Yes, yes.
The appointment of white people and the promotion of white people.
Look, I'm saying the culture must reflect South Africa. It must not reflect Europe. This is the thing. Now, if you've got only Europeans at the top, you're going to have a culture that reflects Europe. And I'm not saying this in a derogatory manner, but the bottom line is that white people in South Africa are European descent, and their culture and articulation and everything is European. Nothing wrong with that. All we are saying is that we also have Africans here, the indigenous Africans. They must find accommodation in everything that happens in the country. So that accommodation must be reflected in policy, must be reflected in culture, must be reflected in everything. So we are not chasing white people away from the country. No, that's not the position. The position is that there must be an equitable sharing of the resources. There must be an equitable sharing of the positions. There must be an equitable sharing of responsibilities and accountability. This is all we're asking for. We're not children. I'm not just this grown-up child sitting here that is waiting for a white person to do something for me. No, I refuse. Well, black people must be respected as adults, must be respected as human beings that have got a brain that they can think for themselves. And therefore, we cannot have a situation where even in the corporates, black people are not trusted. They get given all the kinds of staff function roles, all the support roles, and the main operations roles get given to white people. That on its own is racist, because it seeks to suggest that when you dealing with profit and loss, put a white person. When you're dealing with a non-core function and what have you put black people. This is why you find black people in all the support roles. It's black people. In all the line roles, generally, it's white people. That that talks to the paradigm that we must transform. Now, when we have black people that have finally managed to get to the top, their duty and responsibility is not to mimic white people. Their duty and responsibility is not to outdo white people in being white. We've got enough pure white people. We do not want a black that's trying to be white. No, we want a black person that's going to come into those board meetings and introduce and educate the white people that are there that, no, it might be done like this in your world, but there's another world out there. It's done differently. How do we bring the two together? This is what it should be about.
Is it possible for a white person to be an African?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Look, I think, let's be honest with you see, the problem in South Africa, we like to be politically correct. We need to be honest with each other. White people can be South Africans, citizens, no problem, 100% South Africa, with all the benefits of South Africa. But the issue of being an African, I think, is an anthropological subject, as it were. So the answer is an emphatic no. A white person can't be an African, no.
Okay, would you say Barack Obama is not an American?
The American citizen, yes.
But so he's an American citizen, but not an American.
Well, look, Barack Obama is an African American. He's generally an African living in America. All of them, they are not confused. They call themselves African Americans. They know their roots. Let's make it very simple. Let's say my wife and I, both of us are Africans. Make this very easy for you. My wife and I are both Africans. Let's say we live here, we go and live in China, and then we get a child in China. Are you going to tell me that my child is Chinese? A child will never be Chinese. He'll be a Chinese citizen, but my child will never be Chinese. Simple as that. If I go here and go and live in Europe and get a child in Europe, my child will be a European citizen, a European citizen, full stop. My child is not a European, he's an African with a European citizenship. Simple as that. So you get a European that comes to South Africa. And by the way, I don't know why it's a confusion, because in apartheid days, this was very clear. You know that there was Europeans here in this country. So why are you confused now?
Yeah.
You used to call Europeans and non-Europeans in South Africa. So why are you confused today?
Well, I'll get to the point, but let me ask you this. If the China example, if you move to China and you stay there for generations, and 12 generations, for example, stay there, the children of your children and their children and so forth, and they identify themselves as Chinese, would they still be African?
Yeah, of course, the Africans that understand Chinese very well, the Africans that have adopted the Chinese culture, yes, they have, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, you can't not be who you are. Let's just get this straight. And so that we do, we stop fooling each other. I think this is a problem. We fool each other too much. Let's not fool each other. You are who you are, and I must accept you for who you are. You must accept me for who I am. Let me not try and put some other label to make me comfortable and so on. No, let's not lie to each other. I accept who you are. I have absolutely no problem with who you are, zero problem with who you are. Don't have a problem with who I am as well.
Yeah.
So let's just live, just understand what makes me tick. I understand what makes you tick, and then we live happily ever after.
So do you agree that the Population Registration Act had to be repealed? Because that was the Apartheid Act that categorized people. Say these are the white people, these are the colored people. Do you think because we don't have an act like that in South Africa. So should we have an act like that categorizes people according to skin color, or do you agree that the scrapping of that act was a good idea or not?
Let's first understand what were the intentions of that act. The intention of that act in the first place was to desegregate so that you can distribute the resources disproportionately. That was the purpose of this act. So that
monopoly.
So that if you are an African, you must get less for education, you must get an inferior education and all that. You must not get to certain facilities. If you are an African pensioner, you must get your pension once in every 2 or 3 months, when a white person's pensioner gets his or her pension every month. When you are a white person, you must get better health facilities and so on. When you are a white person, you must benefit from Job Reservation Act. When you are an African or black person, you must not benefit. So it was a segregation meant to disempower black people in general, Africans in particular. That's why this thing had to go, because then it also had Group Areas Act, where white people would live closer to resources in town, black people would live 80 kilometers away. If that legacy still lives with us today, where if you are a Sowetan, you travel kilometers, 80 kilometers from Naledi to town. When you live here and so on in town, it's just a stone throw away to get to a working place. These are the disparities that were caused by that population registration. So it was a negative thing. It was a draconian thing. This is why apartheid was declared crime against humanity. It's because of those things. So indeed it had to go. Today we've got Employment Equity Act, and there you declare yourself. There's nothing that you can decide today. You can declare yourself. You declare yourself as an African. You declare yourself as a whatever. Because now what we're doing, we're trying to redress. You can't address racial imbalances by denying the racial reality. You cannot do that. Do we have Africans in South Africa? Yes, we do. Do we have coloreds? Yes, we do. Do we have Indians? Yes, we do. Do we have white people? Yes, we do. So how do we make sure that we have an equitable dispensation? The best way you can do is what Employment Equity Act has done, to say, okay, just so that we are completely fair with each other, let's first of all understand the numbers. How many economically active population do we have for Africans? 76%. For coloreds, about 10%. For whites, about 10%. For Indians, about 3%. Right. That is the baseline. That's what we are striving for. When you say equitable dispensation, we're saying in line with your economic active population. This is why equal treatment of unequal people will never be equal. You cannot have a situation where you then say, no, it's a new South Africa, let's treat everybody equally, and it's an objective. Even the Constitution says so, that we must strive to achieve that equality. Right now, we do not have equality, we have inequality. And in order to make sure that there's fair competition, you must lift these people to the same level as others, then you can compete on an equal playing field. If you say let's treat equally, what you are saying is that let's entrench inequality. You are saying if you add 5 here, add 5 here, add 5 here, add 5 here. So this whole thing goes up like this. You are maintaining inequality. So it's a very disingenuous way, dishonest way of addressing the problems of South Africa. This is why I will never vote for the DA, because that's what the DA does, talks about nicely about equality and all that, when in fact it's a very cunning way to maintain and entrench inequality by doing it this way. When in fact you should say, these are and we know this, it's black people. So there's nothing racist about saying, let's uplift black people to here, so that once we are here, then the playing field is level. Then we can kill all the laws, then we can compete freely. Right now we can't compete freely because your father left you maybe with a farm, your father maybe left you with some semblance of assets. My father left me with absolutely nothing.
But so you believe my father stole that farm?
I beg your pardon?
In principle, you're saying your father, a white person's father left him with a farm, and you believe that was stolen, or that's something that he didn't deserve to have. Why is that a problem?
Even before we get to that, let's just get to the what are the facts.
Yeah.
The facts are, if you are white in South Africa, whether you like it or not, you benefited because there was a legislation that was favoring you purely because you're white. That's a starting point. Before we talk about stealing, let's just get to the fact and get to the point that if we went to a supermarket in the apartheid days, I couldn't queue up with you. I had to just make way. You have to buy first, serve white people first, and then go. I'll be lucky, in fact, even go inside the supermarket. I'll be served in the window outside. That's the situation that we've had. So there must be no denial of that part of our history. Yes, indeed. How did white people get a lot of this land that they got? It's very simple. Go to the history and see what happened. See what Roets did. See what these people did. White people came here. They found a very peaceful nation. They found us farming. They found us doing our things in our own way. They found us having a nomadic life because we owned the continent. We were roaming around the entire continent and all that. When it's cold here, we moved to a warmer place because we're enjoying our continent. And they came and they started creating all this havoc of creating wars and forceful removal and taking land without compensation. This thing of taking land without compensation was started by white people. They took black people's land without compensation. My own grandfather, by the way, in the Herschel area, had big farms there. He was totally emasculated. Things were taken, his horses were taken, everything was taken. So this is real, the issue of white people taking the land and property from black people without compensation. This is why the subject of taking it back without compensation reappears, because when we were here, we owned the land, we owned the livestock, we owned everything. You guys came, you just took it. So you must take it, you must bring it back. This is the discussion that we're having now. And I'm hoping that the ANC will take a very clear and unapologetic resolution on this matter, that the issue of the expropriation of land without compensation must be a reality. I think the only discussion we can talk about, if you ask me, to be fair, is probably the improvements that you've done. If you say, okay, in my farmhouse, I put in a house, let's talk about that. If you say I put in a fence, let's talk about that. Just to be nice. But don't come and tell me about market value of the land that was taken the way it was taken. No.
Okay, but so do you think King Shaka was a peaceful man? Because you're saying black people lived in peace and they were enjoying life in Africa before the white people came. Was King Shaka a peaceful man?
Well, he was a very good leader, but in the times, because there would be all kinds of disagreements at a national level, the disagreements get into battles and so on. So it's life. It happens even in developed countries and so on. So the issues of wars is a characteristic feature of human beings. Even in the first world, you get wars. So you can't use wars as a measure of whether a person is peaceful or not. It's just how the world works.
Because the point that I'm trying to get to, and also in Silikatsi with the Mufekane, is that happened before the Great Trek. And I know there are different figures on how many people were killed during the Mufekane, and people say it's between 1 and 2 million. We don't know how many people were killed. But my question is this: why do you believe when black groups or communities had wars and they conquered each other, I'm assuming you accept that that was a way of obtaining that land, but that's how the Zulu kingdom expanded. But when it's white people doing that, it's illegitimate. Why do you believe there's a difference?
No, look, I think let's look at the people that were in the subjects of King Shaka as to what then happened when they were conquered. When they were conquered, they would live in let's call it an ego thing from the various shagas of the world. But when people were there, they were not made slaves. This is a fundamental difference. When they were conquered, they were not conquered to be slaves. They were just conquered to be in my control, but they would plant, they would be treated like human beings. The difference here is that you get conquered, and this is why I mustn't be called Jimmy, because the name Jimmy is an admission of being conquered. My parents had to make sure that the conquerors have it easy to call me.
You mean because it's a white name?
Yeah. To call me Jimmy. It was to make it easy for you to call me Jimmy, and so on. This just shows the psychological conquer as well. And my parents were trying to help me to say, my child, in order to survive in this world, we've got these new rulers. Just make it easy for these new rulers to call you. We shall call you Jimmy just so that they can call you, and that type of a thing, to make it easy for you in the world of work. Now that I do not need that, I do not want to be called Jimmy anymore. Mzwanele is my name. Then I can reassert myself as an African. I can reassert myself as a true son of this soil. This is me. This is African. This is what we do when we are alone as Africans. We call each other by clan names and so on. We are a proud African nation, as it were. Now, to be conquered and to be made a slave is the issue. Whether you look at...
So you're saying white people did that in South Africa?
Yeah, they did that. They make us slaves. I mean, if you look at what happens in the mining industry, for instance, you look at the humiliation that black people had to go through. You know what you need to do. We need to do to be employed in the mining industry. When they were doing fitness tests, you needed to undress, totally undress, and you do up and down the steps and so on. And somebody's got a little stick and they do your private parts like this with a stick and to check if, all this nonsense.
That's horrible, yeah.
Total humiliation. That's what they did to black people in the mines. Then you go and you work in the mines and you check the conditions that black people work in those mines. Very dangerous conditions. You even look at even the support system that is there. It's all done in a very economical way, just to ensure that whether you die or not is a non-issue. The important thing, just get the gold out there as cheap as possible. And you find that even the spacing of the packs is not the right density, purely because it's too expensive. We'd rather kill people than put enough packs to support the hanging wall and all that. So you have those very abusive systems per industry. You go to the farms. You know, the other day when I was a DG at Labour, we went to visit the farms. What's that place called? The Dorrance Farm.
Dorrance, yeah, in the Western Cape.
In the Western Cape. I could never believe. This is just as recent as 2010. I could never believe the abusiveness in the Dorrance Farm of our people there. Could not believe this. That they did not even have ablution facilities. This is just as recent as 2010. No ablution facilities. They just sit there, and if they needed to relieve themselves, they must just find a corner and in there. And if they can be seen doing what they needed to do, again, even that is a problem. But there's no ablution facilities. Then when you go to the farmhouse, man, luxury in their farmhouse. That is, there's running water, there's everything, but the people there are treated like pigs out there. This is reality now. As we speak in the farms, African people, black people in the farms are ill-treated. And yet with very nice produce, very big oranges that they do, very nice bananas, very nice everything that comes out of the farmers, very nice meals and everything. But the strife our people go through is just unbearable. This is the problem with being conquered by people that don't treat you as a human being. They treat you as less human.
Yeah.
This is the problem.
Okay, so we went to the Dorans at that time as well, and we couldn't find what you found. But let's say for what you're saying now, but for the sake of the argument, let's say that let's agree what you are saying is the situation. Is it fair to say that these are atrocities committed by white people towards black people? Is that a fair conclusion?
It's a fact of life. It's just fact.
Okay, so but would you say it's fair to conclude that when white farmers are being tortured, would it be fair of me to say that these black people are killing and torturing white people?
No. Look, I'm not quite understanding you. Criminality, wherever it comes from, must be condemned. I condemn it. It must be condemned. So I'm still not sure what you're trying to ask. But if you are saying, because of what has happened, does that give black people the right to go and be criminal to white people? Of course not.
No, I'm asking, is it fair to say, to make a conclusion and to say, because we see what's happening with farm murders, to conclude black people are criminals? I mean, I don't think that's a fair conclusion.
No, but you must first understand who did the farm killings. This is the issue. Because don't conclude that when farmers are killed, unnecessarily killed by black people without evidence. This is the problem with South Africa. South Africans don't want evidence. They just make up their minds and conclude. Who said they've been killed by black people? If they are killed by black people and you know it's black people that killed them, those are murderers. Why are they not arrested? You know, why do you why if you found farmers having been killed, which is totally abhorrent, it should never be, it should have never happened. But the question I have is, why have you concluded that they've been killed by black people when you haven't got black people that they've been arrested for this? What makes that conclusion? That on its own is racist, because you are associating a criminal behavior with black people only. Who said it's only black people, particularly if you have not arrested them?
Well, I don't know, other than domestic violence, I don't know of any farmer who's been murdered by a white person. I'm sure there are, but so let's make it practical. So the question is, what would the proportion then have to be? Because also all labor abuses in the labor market aren't only committed by white people. So you can make the same argument and say, well, then you shouldn't generalize and say these are committed by white people, because there are also black people who are abusing their workers.
Yeah, look, I think let's just finish the farm discussion.
Yeah.
I think what is important is going to be data. Let's talk on data. What are the facts? All I know is that when I look at the court cases, I don't know how many white people have shot black people in farms and saying they were baboons, they were whatever, all kinds of, they were mistaken them for this, mistaken them for that. White people, they shoot black people for those kinds of things. I don't know, we've got families that live in farms, most of us as black people. The stories they tell us are shocking as to the treatment they get from their white farm owners, as it were. So shocking stories. There are people that, I mean, you saw the other day, Middleburg, where farmers, a person was crossing the farm and so on, and that's the only crime he committed, to be running across the farm. And then they decided that they're going to bury this person alive. They put a live person in a coffin. I mean, how do you have a situation like this? So this is how ruthless some of these white farmers can be, and all that. So that's why I'm saying, let's look at the stats. Criminality, wherever it comes from, it should always be condemned. I would never condemn any form of criminality, regardless of whatever has been done to all of us. But criminality must be condemned. But you cannot generalize and say black people are like this. What the reason we generalize in the African in the white monopoly capital thing is because this was a law to dominate black people. The white domination was legislated by form of apartheid laws. This is why we're dealing with the system. We're not dealing with white people per se. We're dealing with a system of domination. We're dealing with a system of exploitation. It just so happens to be controlled by white people. But the main thing, more than anything else, is the system of domination and the system of exploitation that we're dealing with. That's the issue.
Okay, but would you? What's your view on this argument? You're saying because it was a law, you can generalize to an extent at least. But in 1985 in Kabwe, the ANC took a policy decision that in their military actions, they don't need to differentiate between hard and soft targets. So can I then say, because it was an ANC policy, I can generalize about crime? I don't think I should, but I'm just trying to make a comparison.
No, look, I think you must understand what the ANC was dealing with. You must understand that the ANC has always been a peaceful organization. It was failed by the system. You must look at the letters, very humble letters, that the leaders of the ANC were writing to Verwoerd and all these people with greatest of respect and trying to say, please, please, please. You know, they did everything possible, humanly possible, to say, let's do this kind of a thing. And let's allow South Africans to be, let's allow black people to be recognized as human beings and so on and so on. They did everything possible up until it was clear that the racist regime does not want to budge. Then they went into the armed struggle as a last resort, and even then, the issue was to target certain installations and so on. There was never like a target. There was never a situation where there was a massacre of white people as a policy, so just go and massacre. No. It was to hit the apartheid establishments. There would always be maybe an accident or something which is regrettable and so on. But there's never been a situation where a decision is taken to say, okay, where is the nearest church? Let's go and bomb white people in a church.
Well, that happened in the St. James Church in Cape Town. But that was Apla, I think. They came into the church with hand grenades and AK-47s.
I'm an ANC member. So in the ANC, we don't do stuff like that. The ANC was attacking institutions like your gesels of this world, all those installations to try and cripple the regime. That's what the ANC was doing. That's why ANC continues even today to be a noble organization. And sometimes people confuse the shenanigans done by this or that individual, and that takes away the brand equity of the ANC. But the ANC itself is a non-racial organization that continues to ensure that we've got racial unity. But you can't talk about non-racialism and not talk about the different races. Different races are a fact of life. You can talk about different races. Non-racialism should mean treating everybody as a human being regardless of race. That's what it's about. It's not about denying the race of people. No, you can't. I can't say, I mean, this notion that I can't see color is an absolute nonsense. There's no such a thing. Of course, we all see color. When I walk into this room, I immediately see I'm the only black person in this room. You know, so nothing racist about that. It's just a fact of life. You're all right. I have no problem with that.
But I've decided that I'm an African. I'm a black African. Would you deny that? If I say to you, I am a black African.
But you would know yourself. Your conscience will tell you that you're just playing games. So I won't even take you seriously. I will just say, okay, if you say so, let's move on. Yeah. I won't lose sleep over that because you know that you're not an African. You're just saying that just for expediency. So
there's a lot that I still want to discuss, but we need to conclude.
Yeah.
But you actually just gave a very good introduction on the last point that I want to touch on, which is racism. So firstly, what's your definition of racism? So let's make it two questions. What's your definition of racism? Can black people be racist?
Yeah. Racism, people confuse it with many things. It's a very simple thing. Racism is about thinking that because of your race, you are superior to the other, period. The other stuff is something else. Let me explain this. If you think on the basis of being white, you are superior to me because I am black, you are a racist when you say that. You see, a racist, even if I've got PhD and he's got standard 2, he still thinks, or she still thinks that is superior to me, purely because of race. So it's an issue of race supremacy issue. That's what it's about. It's not about hate. Do you know that a racist can still love black people? A racist white. It's not about hate. This is quite complex. You may be a white person that is a racist, but not hate black people. The only thing for you...
I agree with you, yeah.
The only thing is that you just don't see them as human beings. You don't see them as your equals and all that. That is the classical definition of a racist. There are many white racists that treat black domestic workers better than how other black madams, so to speak, treat their domestic workers. This is a fact of life. But those people are still racist because they treat those domestic workers as their little children. A grown-up 65-year-old is called by a 25-year-old by a first name, and she must come running and everything because she's like a child to this child, to this white child. So if you've got that construct in your mind, then you must know then that you're a racist, as it were. Can black people be racist? Africans. You can't be racist. There's no such a thing as a black person who is a racist. There is no. You see, in the white family, it's fact that there are white people that are taught. It's fact that there are white people that are taught that are superior to black people based on race. That is fact. There is no black person that grows up being told you are superior to a white person, as it were. There's no such a thing. You grow up to be who you are and whatever, and to try and coexist with everybody else. There is no racial supremacy inculcation in the African culture over others to say that your race as an African is superior than the race of others. There's no such inculcation.
And so African nationalism is not that. That's not believing that your race is better than other races.
No, it's just to say no.
What's the difference?
It just, you see, this is. I'm happy you asked this question. You see, the biggest problem in South Africa is this thing called binary thinking. Binary thinking is a problem. If I say that I don't want white monopoly capital, binary thinking will say, therefore, I prefer black monopoly capital. This is a very flawed thinking. Anybody that thinks like that thinks flawed.
False dichotomy to an extent.
Yeah. If I am saying I am a proud African, which I am, I'm a very proud African, that is not a statement against Europeans. No, absolutely not. It's just a statement on its own. I'm a proud African, I'll continue to be a proud African. That is no bearing to Europeans. It's not a statement of anti-European or anti-anybody that's not African, no.
But you know, that's what Eugene Terblanche said about white pride.
What did he say?
He said he's proud to be white, and there's nothing wrong with white pride because he doesn't hate black people. But would you say he was a racist?
Eugene Terblanche, of course, was a racist because Eugene Terblanche, you must go to Ventersdorp and look at his legacy in Ventersdorp and look at how he treated black people. If he was not a racist, you would see the manner in which he was coexisting with black people. He had his own slaves in his farm, that man. No,
you have a broad definition of slavery. I'm not saying but
well, it's a broad definition, I accept.
Okay.
Yeah, but he had his own modern slaves in his farm. So for a fact, Eugene Terblanche, leader of AfriForum, was indeed a racist. That is a fact.
Okay, but so the principle of white pride, that's usually associated with racism. Do you agree that if I go on Twitter and I say hashtag white pride or something, would that be racist?
No, absolutely not. But once you connote that white pride as supremacy,
I see.
That's where the problem comes. If you think by being white, you are by definition superior to blacks, then you're a racist. Yeah.
You know, superiority. No, you can make a point.
It's also not a hate issue. There are black people that hate each other more than they hate white people on their own. That's why hate is not a thing. That's why other people talk about resources that you will. No. The issue is racial supremacy. That's all. That's the up and down of it. It's just racial supremacy. As long as you think on the basis of your race, you are superior.
You are better than others.
You are superior. Let's use the word superior. Yeah, you've got a better DNA. You've got a superior DNA. You've got a superior thinking. You've got a bigger brain.
Like Adolf Hitler.
You are naturally intelligent more than the other race. Then you are a racist.
Okay, so this brings me to the point that we discussed at the beginning also, is the issue of monopoly. And help me if I paraphrase you incorrectly, but you said white monopoly or monopoly in the private sphere is a problem and it's devastating for the country. But if it's black monopoly, so to speak, you didn't use that term, but monopoly in the public sphere, which is run by black people mostly, it's not a problem. It's not bad for the country. Is that not a form of saying that black people are superior to white people?
Yeah, I'm happy you raise this question the way you raise it. Firstly, do understand, against your own psychic, there is no such a thing as a black government. Okay, you must just try and internalize that. So when you say government...
Is there such a thing as a white government?
There used to be. There used to be a white government. We do not have a black government. We've got a non-racial government as you have today. On all levels, there are white people in government. From the most junior level, call it a deputy director level, all the way in the bureaucracy of government, you find white people, starting point. At cabinet level, you find white people. Why? What's black about this government? You've got white people everywhere, even at the ANC, the ruling party. You've got white people there running ministries. What's black about that? You know? So you have a government is not this is why it's important to keep monopolies that are state-run, because those are not black monopolies. It's not true. Those are government monopolies. Government is not black. Try and internalize that. Government is not black. Government is non-racial. And as I've said, I can give you in every you can go to state-owned enterprises, look at the boards, everything. There is no such a thing and moreover, there is nothing in government that is punitive toward people in the government policies. Absolutely nothing that is punitive toward people. I challenge you now.
Except representativity.
That's not punitive. It's being fair. It's saying, let's make sure that white people are there in proportion to their economic active population. You can't get anything fairer than that unless you want to continue a domination. You want to dominate black people everywhere, unless this is what you want to do. But if you want to be fair, we have to say, how many of you? 10%? Okay, 10%. You know, but if you are 10% but you want 100%, it means you want to dominate. This is what we want to do. We want to deconcentrate that domination at a political level. We want to deconcentrate that domination at economic level. See, this is what we want to do. We want to have a society that is truly non-racial, a society that is equitable, a society where South Africa is for all who live in it equitably. This is the issue.
Okay, so if Bafana Bafana is 100% black, 11 black players, would you campaign for them to include more white people, to take some of those black players out?
In fact, soccer is probably one of the most racially balanced sports, because in a team of 11, you always find one or two white guys in there, and that is in correct proportion to their economic active population. So it's a perfect example. I'm happy you've chosen that. But go and look at rugby and see if rugby represents South Africa. Go look at cricket and see if cricket represents South Africa. It's a problem. So soccer is a very good example. Happy you use this. I mean, guys like Tinkler have always been in soccer, we accept them as one of our own, because they've always been there. There's quite a few of them that are there, one or two, but that one or two is in line with the economic active population, so that's perfect.
Yeah, but my question is, we always hear people talking about rugby being where black people are underrepresented. But
Yes.
in the 2010 World Cup, I think, the Bafana at one stage was 100% black. But no one was complaining, saying that there are too few white people or too many black people. If the team is 100% black, is that a problem?
Look, it's important to always reflect the demographics everywhere. It's important, but at the same time, when it comes to certain things like sports, for all the will in the world, it's also got to do with people's choices. If white people do not want to play soccer, they want to play rugby, what must you do? But the issue here, the important thing here is there a policy in soccer that seeks to do away with white people? Answer is no. The white people are not there because they choose not to be there. It's their democratic choice that they've made. There is no white person that can say, I was discriminated against on the basis of being white. This is the problem. So if you are not there out of your own choice, you can't blame the system. The system is welcoming. Those that are there, you can go to them. They are treated just like anybody else. There is no abuse of them. They feel like, like everybody else. So it's no problem.
Okay, so last question. Moving forward in South Africa, why do you think should the goal be as South Africa? Maybe that's 3 questions in one, but you can answer in the way you choose. Where are we heading, or where should we be heading? And then what should, because we were talking about white people and black people. So what should white people do and what should black people do to achieve that goal?
I think the very first thing is honesty. We must be honest with each other. This is very important. We must remove political correctness. That is fundamental. Once we are honest with each other, and then we'll be able to move forward. You cannot have a national cohesion based on tea and biscuits. Cannot be a national cohesion on that. Visit me with a piece of cake in my neighbor. That's not going to build sustainable national cohesion. The first and fundamental thing that we must do, we must redress the imbalances of the past. We must redress the issues of the land. You see, with the best will in the world, if Africans want to build their own factories, that everybody's saying, do your own thing, where do you do your own thing when you haven't got even land to do it on? This is the issue. So land must be equitably distributed. The economy must go sector by sector. It cannot be sustainable to have an insurance industry that is 99% white owned. So I can go through all the sectors. So the sooner we have a very clear and a deliberate program of equitable sharing of the resources. For instance, white people in this country should march to the chamber and say, drop your case against the Manyi Charter, because what the Manyi Charter is seeking to do is to redress the imbalances. Of the 26%, the Manyi Charter said just an additional 4 to make it 30 as a starting point. But these guys are going to court, they're going to kill jobs, and they forget that for the past 5 years, they've been shedding jobs in the first place. It's almost like now they're trying to use that as an excuse, which has been happening throughout, even without the charter. That's how disingenuous these people are. So white people should march to the chamber and say, genoeg is genoeg. We want to have black people on the same level with us, allow them equity, allow these communities that we've been exploiting. You know, if you go to areas like Carltonville, Kimberley, Rustenburg, you look at the surrounding areas, there is no evidence that those surrounding areas are producing the cornerstone of the wealth of this country in terms of mines. Those people are living in squalor, you know. I mean, I shudder to think people that call themselves black chairmen of these entities that operate in those places, how do they come to terms with themselves? those board members that serve, those black shareholders and board members that serve on those companies, what do they say when they know the opulence they live in with the minds and themselves alone, and then they look at the people in the surrounding areas? What do they think when they see this? This is what the Mining Charter is seeking to do, to equalize this. So in conclusion, I'm saying in order to have social cohesion that is sustainable, the first and fundamental thing that must be done is to redress the imbalances of the past. You must make sure that black people in this country must feel as not just workers. You know, this notion that when you think about black people, all you think about is workers, as workers and workers, and not owners of the economy. That on its own is actually racist, because you are doing the step-up thing against that. No, these are just blacks. All they do is just jobs, nothing to do with ownership, nothing to do with the control of the economy. So we want to have an equalized and a level playing field in order to have a sustainable national cohesion. When I come into your house, I must feel that I'm coming to an equal. I mustn't come to your house and start envying everything in your house and start loving even your nice green grass and your nice flowers. I must have the same in my own house. I must have nice green grass. I must have the flowers. I must have everything and all that. So indeed, I'm saying redress the imbalances of the past. And if we do not do that, South Africa is going to burn. This is what's going to happen. The little that white people have, the little that the black opulent people have, is going to all go. This country will burn if we don't do the redress of the economic imbalance. It's quite a serious issue, and we must stop being nice to each other and denying the white monopoly capital. White monopoly capital exists. This is fact of life. Let's stop denying it. Let's just deal with it. Just concentrate it properly. Put proper anti-monopoly laws to make sure that we deal with this thing. Amend the constitution to ensure that we've got land without expropriation. Amend, repeal triple PFA so that black people can benefit from the procurement of government. Repeal CIDB so that the black construction companies can also prosper. You know, also review PFMA. Is a very archaic financial management system that favors the people that have already been doing business with government. The new players are not allowed by the system into the government and all that. The barriers of entry are higher because you don't have experience of doing government work, and so on and so on. So there are quite a few structural things that must change in order to level the playing field. Government has got a lot to do to make laws that are progressive, and also and by the way, as I conclude, I mean, there's this notion, for instance, that the ANC has got good policies, the problem is implementation. I challenge that notion. The ANC has got good policies, yes. The problem is not ANC policies. The problem is converting ANC policies to government policy. There is a big disjuncture between good ANC policies and government policies. Government policies continue to favor white monopoly capital. So we must reform, we must repeal, we must review those government policies in order for them to reflect the spirit and the intent as contained in the Freedom Charter.
Mr. Manyi, thank you very much. You got the last word. Thank you for coming in.
No, you're most welcome.